We will fulfill that mission. We will right this ship, and we will position the agency for its best days ahead. At this time, I'm happy to entertain any questions that you may have. Yes?
How soon will you need that supplemental money?
As soon as possible. Obviously, we have a budget situation in this state where many factions are going to have to come together to address that, but this agency will need that money at the earliest point possible.
Preston, how much is missing from 2011 until now?
Well, to say missing isn't necessarily the appropriate way to approach it. The books haven't been reconciled from year in and year out in the manner in which they should be. But the matter at hand is this $30 million that is critical. And I would suggest to you that if we can receive that infusion, and as we begin as a team to look at the agency as a whole, to begin to redefine what our core mission is. One of the reasons why we got in this position is because of some mission creep and not being able to afford expansion in the areas. You know, the good thing about public health advocates is they want to do as much good as possible for as many as possible, but we are in a situation where we can't afford to be everything to everyone.
Let me rephrase the question. How much is unaccounted for since 2011?
Well, again, that assessment is ongoing, and a week in, I don't have the answer to that, and the auditor's work will be more indicative of the answer that you're looking for.
More than 100 million?
I mean, I'm focused on the immediate need of what it's going to take to ensure that I can meet payroll for these folks within the coming weeks.
So the $30 million is just the whole for the current fiscal year, and it's possible that it could be larger?
If we have an infusion of $30 million, we can. A couple things happen. It takes the pressure off of our current fiscal situation to allow us, frankly. Sean, that was a good way to answer the question. I'm sorry I didn't understand it the other way. That will actually allow us to have the time to do the necessary work on the back years as well. That we've got to take the immediate pressure off. The best way I know to describe the situation that we currently find ourselves in is, on one hand, we are performing emergency surgery on a ruptured aorta in the immediate, while at the same time treating a long-term disease process involving multi-organ system failure. So we've got two different things here. I have to address the immediate need with the help of the auditor and my senior team. We'll also peel back the layers of the other issues. But if I don't fix the immediate problem, we can't fulfill our mission. And that is my focus. And it really does no one any good for me to be focused on anything except fixing the immediate problem.
So the $30 million will prevent the RIFs and the furloughs, or no?
No, that's not true, and I'm happy to address that. In certain parts of this agency, as resources diminished, the appropriate modifications to service areas were not realized. And so what I'm saying in plain English is that we continued to do things that we couldn't afford to do.
Right.
And that also manifests in the form of people. Frankly, and just being in full disclosure, there should have been a look at program areas and people over a period of years. Now we're placed in a position of having to look at, the furloughs are already in place, and having to look at the very real possibility of a reduction in force in the future. The reduction in force, though, will be approached very strategically, and again, it goes hand in hand with looking at program areas that we may not continue to provide.
Okay, it's not missing. They just overspend, or how do we characterize that?
In the simplest terms, yes, they overspent.
And juggle the books that long, somebody doesn't catch this.
Well, this agency, and I'm not making excuses, and I'm also not judge and jury, but this agency had gone through several CFOs in a relatively short period of time. They went about a year without a CFO. And then there were movement of monies between funds to try to keep everything going the way that it was, and we reached a point of, I mean, like anything, you can't perpetuate that forever, and we're now at a point of having to reconcile.
Is it possible that there was criminal activity?
Well, again, other people will speak to that, Sean. I'm not a law enforcement professional, and any of the AG's office is involved, the auditor's office is involved. It does not benefit anyone for me to spend very much time on that issue when we have other people who will speak to that.
What kind of backstops are available at OMS to kind of catch this kind of stuff? Maybe is there, we're taking the budget 1 year and it's passing through and everybody's getting paid. I mean, how do you know on OMS that something's going wrong?
Yeah, so, I mean, the budgets that were being presented to us were balanced budgets. And it's a great question. When I talk about statutory changes, I do think there are some things that as we go through this, we can be able to work with the legislature on to provide some additional safeguards.
Yeah, because they were mistaking you, the board, a lot of people for their financial information.
Correct.
Do you anticipate an extra appropriation once you reach the regular session for the next fiscal year?
I'm sorry.
Like beyond the 30 million from right now, do you anticipate beyond?
No, if we are able to secure the 30 million, I have every confidence that we will be able to make it through. And with again, this will be a team effort, and I've asked the employees to link arms with me as we go through this process. But as we evaluate, and the work that the Joint Commission on Public Health does with us should help us identify ways that we can lean the organization and not require additional appropriation.
On a bigger scale, how does this impact the special session? It's just 30 million that we're planning on spending.
Yeah, no, it's a complicating factor. There's no question that this couldn't have come at a worse time. It is what it is. Again, I'll reiterate that we have a lot of good people showing up every day in this agency doing really good work for the benefit of the state of Oklahoma and our citizens. And I will not, and we cannot allow it to fail. But of course, it's a complicating factor as we're dealing with the other issues within the state government and the budget. But the bottom line is that this is not of my creating. This is not of these folks creating. But it is the situation that we find ourselves in, and we have to address it and deal with it. And while we're doing that, we've got to position the agency in the best way possible to be able to carry out their mission going forward. Yes?
Is it possible that the health department will have to pay back any federal funds to the federal government?
It is possible.
So $30 million could possibly grow to a larger number.
It could. As we interact with our federal partners, that will come to be known. We'll do everything we can to mitigate that as part of our action plan. But yes, it is a possibility.
Could you give some examples of this robbing Peter to pay Paul, some money was being sent elsewhere there should have been?
Well, just fundamentally, an agency like this does have its finances are complex. At the end of the day, it is fund accounting, but we had monies being moved from various funds, and in some cases restricted funds, to be utilized for operations.
Wouldn't that be criminal in nature?
I mean, Sean, we're going to work very closely with the AG's office. We already are with our partners there and with the auditor's office. But you can ask me again, or somebody else can if they want, but I'm not going to address questions about criminality. It's not my place to do that. I've got a job to do, and that's what I'm focused on.
Can you give us an example of some of those restricted funds that were used and spent?
At this time, I think because the auditor's role is in play in this, I don't want to get into the specifics and out of fear of compromising their work. And but I can just tell you on its face that there are monies moved from different funds to try to continue to cause this operation to.
Could regular audits by the auditor have prevented this as opposed to OMES doing their audits?
Well, I don't do audits at OMES, so the answer to that is no. The audit, you'd have to ask the auditor on exactly what the scope of their audits have been in the past.
What does that mean OMES in terms of overseeing?
I don't oversee. I think there must be a misunderstanding here of exactly what OMES's role is, because we interact with the agencies. They provide us budgets. If I can take your question in a different direction, I think that this shows that there is a need for a different level of visibility into agencies that receive federal funds, and that is another conversation we'll be having with the legislature regarding statute changes to allow someone within state government to have a heightened level of visibility into those agencies that receive various colors of money or different pots of money from different sources.
So safe to say that there was no oversight?
I don't know that you can say there was no oversight. And again, the scope of the auditor's audits in this specific agency I can't speak to. But
what was the role of the internal auditor in the state health department?
So that function reports directly to the board, and I've had a chance to assess some of the responsibilities of that role. And at this time, I do not believe that they were as extensive as they should have been.
What happens if you don't get the 30 million?
It'll be catastrophic.
You'll have to close county health departments, lay off workers.
We are working on that scenario right now, but that's not an option, Sean.
It's our understanding that even within the next month or 2 months before the year is over, that without this money, I guess the agency wouldn't be able to make payroll. Would that be correct?
That's true.
And even with this money, you still might, there still could be rifts, and the furloughs are continuing regardless.
Right, at this time. And this RIF conversation, I want to be very clear that in some form or another, there will be a reduction in force as we evaluate the agency. But it needs to be approached strategically. RIFs are the least appropriate way to deal with workforce issues. They're usually done in a very sloppy manner. And so I've already assembled a group at the office to both look at program areas and then see how that affects people. But whatever we do, it'll be done in a strategic manner and not in a sloppy way.
Without the $30 million, when would you, is there a date for when you would be able to make payroll?
Yes, if we do not get the cash infusion, we are at risk of not making payroll at the end of the month, which would be the 29th.
So you need that money now.
I needed it yesterday.
Where would it come from?
There is cash available for supplemental appropriations, and I would ask in the immediate sense that they make an appropriation, a supplemental appropriation from that cash. That's the conversation I had this morning. I've made some commitments, as I've shared with you today, that together with the staff at the Oklahoma State Department of Health, we'll make some very difficult decisions in the months ahead about what we are about as far as critical services to the state of Oklahoma.
Did the lawmakers give you any immediate feedback on that?
Well, the one thing I want, for you guys to know sincerely, there's an understanding that the people who are left and myself in the role that I've assumed are not who created the situation. And there was a lot of expression today, as there has been, frankly, across the state, of appreciation for the employees and a lot of support for the employees. We've had some controversy recently with a certain member of the State House of Representatives, and I'm here to tell you that the only reason why this entire thing we call state government works, and I mean across the entire enterprise, and I can tell you for sure that the only reason why the State Department of Health works is because, again, we have some conscientious people showing up every day, giving it their all. And so that was expressed by the legislature. Certainly the governor wanted me to convey her support for this agency, for its mission. And, the finances, there was not a strong commitment, but they certainly have, and again, I'm meeting with leadership. They've got a caucus that they have to interact with. But there was an appreciation for the urgency of what's occurring here, and for the immediate need.
Just for clarification, what type of oversight was there of the agency from 2011 to now? Who was monitoring those?
Well, again, you asked about the auditor. The auditor, has a role to play. Certainly, the board has a role to play, but that's another area where the board is only as good as the information it receives. And there was information that was presented to the upper leadership of this agency that looked different by the time the board might have seen it.
Who was presenting that information?
Financial folks, other people operationally within the agency.
You mentioned earlier mission creep and various programs, cost programs. Do you have any examples of those programs for that we were discussing?
There are some areas, and again, understand that I have a sensitivity to the employees who work in these areas, and that nothing I say is in any way to discredit the work that they did or the mission that they were given. The truth of the matter is that there was just more taken on than what the agency could afford to do, and it is also partly a reflection of people who are wired this way. I mean, the reason why these folks do what they do is because they care a whole lot about people and about the citizens of our state, and particularly the health of our citizens. So, but there are areas that we continue to assess and evaluate that I'm not sure we should be in, and we'll release more details on those areas as we do those evaluations.
What is the size of the RIF you might be considering?
You know what? I'm not. I haven't prescribed a number because we have a process that we need to go through, and again, I'm not going to throw out numbers. I think it's irresponsible, and until these things have to move in tandem, and that is evaluation and assessment of various program areas, and then see what that looks like on service delivery, and then making sure we have the right resources in the form of people to be able to deliver those services or not.
You mentioned earlier that not receiving the $30 million supplemental appropriation isn't really an option that would be catastrophic. But are there plans in place if that doesn't happen?
Yes, we are developing contingency plans, and it's ugly.
What does it look like?
Well, it's not rocket surgery. If you don't have $30 million, you're not going to be able to carry out a lot of services that you're currently providing to the citizens of the state. And to get into the specifics of that, I'm going to rely on the people that I work with to help me identify where we have the least impact possible.
Do you have a timeline for when you might know whether or not you guys have everything?
I think I was asked about feedback from the legislature. I think from the conversations I had with them and the governor's office and having appreciation for our sense of urgency, we'll know something sooner than later, but a specific hard and fast, we're going to know something by Friday. If you've observed the legislature much lately, it's going to be pretty difficult to pinpoint exactly when they might be able to have agreement and take an action.
How many employees are on the department's payroll?
Approximately 2,060.
Now will this impact the 250? I think you kind of addressed that before, but I'm not sure until the time.
Well, the 250 is a nebulous number. It shouldn't. I'm not going to use that number. The previous administration chose to use 250 and had some logic for it. I'm not focused on that. I've got a different mission, and that is approaching the organization holistically and figuring out if there are program areas that we've gotten into that maybe we can reduce our scope. The best way I know how to say this is it is an opportunity too, but this is a hard reset for this organization, and it's not necessarily a bad time for us to go through this process, regardless of the current situation, because we also know that federal monies coming to the states are going to continue to be diminished, and so it's a good exercise for us to go through. Under crisis, would I've preferred it a different way? Of course, but we can do this in a way that is thoughtful and is strategic and causes the least amount of disruption to the critical services that we offer as an agency.
How much is the firm's total payroll?
Our biweekly payroll. Brian, do you have that number handy? I want to say it was around 5.6 million bi-weekly.
And do you have a target? Set target by the payroll that you're going to have to reduce that to?
We haven't gotten that far. Again, I don't want to make stupid decisions as we go through this process or knee-jerk decisions. We're going to be very thoughtful and very strategic about how we approach any reduction in force. I mean, in addition to the employees that work for this agency that we're talking about, we're also talking about service delivery to our citizens, and we need to be very thoughtful as we go through this process. Yes.
How confident that similar situations haven't happened to other agencies in the state?
You know, it's a great question, and there is heightened interest among the legislature, among the governor's office, and by extension OMES, to interact with agencies who have funding mechanisms like the State Department of Health, whether that be a DHS, a Department of Transportation, the Oklahoma Healthcare Authority. Again, these are areas that I hope to engage the legislature in a dialogue as far as potential statutory changes as well. Okay, well, listen, thank you for being here. We will be in communication regularly. That's one of the things that has to happen through this process is a new level of transparency, both internally and externally. Again, I do ask for your patience on the open records request as we try to fulfill those to the best of our ability. Thank you.